Hello everybody! Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today is day 25 of Christy's Beautiful Life, 30 Days of Sketches, Scraptember, and it's also Christmas in September. Today's sketch is in the upper left-hand corner. The Scraptember prompt is punches and dies. And I'm combining these challenges with Moira O'Reilly's Christmas in September challenge. And so you could see that today's layout is a Christmas theme. I'm using a K & Company collection called Yuletide, and I've cut out 3 long strips of paper, and I'm going to be layering those behind that strip of photos. The red pattern paper that I'm inking the edges of right now, that is also from the Yuletide collection, and I went around each of those pieces of paper and the strip of photos, and I inked all of them. I'm using some Distress Oxide to do that. The color I'm using is Fired Brick. I spend a little bit of time figuring out exactly how I want to place the papers that are behind the photo. I want there to be pattern papers on both sides of the strip, and I'm playing around a little bit to try to get those angles right. You could see that I had to tear the strip of photos off of one of the pattern papers, but I do end up getting it right on the second try. I layered the dark red paper right behind the strip of photos. The strip of photos is mounted on an off-white paper, so that will help the strip of photos to stand out. And then behind that, I put another off-white sheet of paper, and there's some green worked in there too, which is mainly visible on the bottom and off to the left a little bit. And now I'm starting my mixed media background. The piece of background paper I'm using is a thick piece of white smooth cardstock, and I've already coated it with some white Liquitex gesso, and I'm using some Distress Oxide pads on the background. The colors that I use to make the blue background are tumbled glass and speckled egg. I wanted to use blue in the background because it's one of the colors that's in the collection, but I thought that it was different enough from all the other colors that it would contrast with the pattern paper and with the other elements that I'm going to be putting on the page. I'm using the packaging technique. I am just squishing the pad on the plastic, spraying some water, and I am just spreading it around with the plastic. I'm using a small paintbrush to make some splatters, and I'm putting the splatters all over, but I want to make sure that I have a decent amount of splatters right around the edge of the area of blue color. Now I'm using a stencil that's made by Fun Stamper's Journey called Starbright, and I'm using a baby wipe, and I'm just putting the stencil on top of the areas of Distress Oxide and rubbing away some of the color. And this technique is very subtle, but I like the way it adds a little something to the background. I'm trialing my strip of photos on the background just to make sure that I like the way everything is going to look together. And now I'm adding a little bit of a gold color to the background. This is Lindy's Magical. It's called Grab a Guy Gold. And when I added the gold in, first it looked a little too dark, and then I rubbed it away, and then I rubbed away a lot of the blue, so I had to go back in with the blue again. So now I know for future reference that putting the gold down first would probably be a good idea. So I'm just building the color back up again using both of the same colors I used before, tumbled glass and speckled egg. And now I'm going back in again with the stencil and rubbing away the color again. Now this time, probably because there are more layers of color, there are some dark edges around some of the stars. But that's very easy to fix. I just went in with a baby wipe and I just very gently dabbed up any of the areas that I thought were a little bit too dark. I find that if you rub very gently with a baby wipe and you're very careful, you can usually soften up the color quite a bit. Now, like I do in every mixed media background, I'm adding some white splatters to the background. That's watered down white acrylic paint. I just love how that looks on pretty much every mixed media background. Then I add some gold Heidi Swapp color shine. And once that's all dry, I made sure that it was thoroughly dry. Then I sprinkled on some water, and I'm using a paper towel to lift up the water, which lifts up a little bit of paint from the background. And for the most part, this is achieving the same thing that the stencil and the baby wipe did. It lifts up color from the background. It's just that the sprinkles of water, of course, look a little bit more natural and random than the stencil. I'm adding a few more splatters to the background, and you could see that I'm also using the baby wipe to clean up the left side of the photo. I don't think it has to be perfectly white. There can be some splatters on there, and there definitely are, even at the end of the layout. I didn't clean them all up, but I do want it to look generally white. I attach my piece of pattern paper back down again, and then I decided I was going to pop up my strip of photos using some fun foam. I'm just piecing a few scraps that I had in my foam drawer together. And it's always easier to cut the foam before you take the backing off. So it's best to measure beforehand. I didn't do a very good job measuring on one of those pieces. Now I'm putting some ATG adhesive on the back of the photo cluster, and now I'm going to start embellishing the background. You can see that in the sketch there are a lot of stars, so I decided to do the same thing and use stars on my layout. I had a giant red and green Jolie star, and I decided to use the red one. I used my scissors to cut it in half, so I could put half on one side of the photos and half on the other side. I also have these Jolie's gold stars, and they were supposed to be ornaments, so they have a little string at the top, so I just trimmed that off with my scissors, and I decided to layer a gold star on each of the halves of the red stars. Now I went back into my stash and found these Jolie's gold stars. I love these stars. I've purchased them quite a number of times over the years. I bought them probably in Michael's or Joann, and then years later I saw them on Tuesday Morning. So whenever I saw them, I picked some of them up, and I find they're great on a lot of projects. And I found some gold rhinestones on one of the sticker sheets, so I decided to put a few of those on the page. And now I'm working on my title. My title is going to be Merry in the Making. I'm using some Sticko letters, and I wasn't sure if I was in love with the color, so I coated them with some Distress Oxide in Mowed Lawn. The letters are laminated, so the Distress Oxide didn't really take well, so I decided instead to use some Distress ink and coat the top and the bottom mainly with the Distress ink. It made a little bit of a difference. I definitely wouldn't use this technique if I wanted to make a big change in the color, but I just wanted to add a little tint of color. And you could see that I'm laying out the letters in the same spot on my layout that it is in the sketch. And off camera, I'm going to be making sure that those letters are straight. It takes me a bit of time. I was noticing that the stars on the right-hand side where the red pattern paper is, they didn't really contrast with the background. So I decided that I was going to use a very light piece of pattern paper and make a border around each of the stars. And I think that that off-white paper did really help to make the stars more visible. Now I needed there to be a border on the stars on the right-hand side because of the red background, but I didn't really need to do the same thing on the left, but I put the off-white paper behind those stars as well, just so that everything would be consistent on the layout. So after I backed all the stars and then placed them back on the layout, I wasn't really sure where to go from there. So I took out a whole bunch of Christmas embellishments, and I found I had a Fancy Pants die cut set. And there were some red transparencies. You could see that there are those scrolls or swirls now on either side of the photo, and I really liked that addition. I liked the dark red embellishments because they were noticeable both on the pattern paper on the right and on the mixed media paper on the left. I added the words in the between merry and making. Those are just some really tiny stickers that I had in my stash. And then I found a whole bunch of other transparencies I thought I might be able to use on the layout, and those are from the same pack as the red scrolls. So there are some stars that I put underneath the title. They're very small gold stars. And then there are some slightly larger stars, and I'm sprinkling those around the layout as well. A little earlier, I put a small die cut that says 25 in gold to the right side of the photos. I'm just securing some of the stars and some of the die cuts down. I used some Distress Oxide in Mowed Lawn to ink the tab. Then I remembered that the Scraptember prompt was punches and dies. Up to this point, I haven't made anything with a punch or a die on my layout. So I used a punch in my stash to punch out this little tab, and I'm putting the year on it with some very small stickers. I'm using my scissors to arrange the numbers, and I'm purposely making them staggered and not straight. Once I have all the numbers arranged, I put some ATG adhesive on the back of the tab. I put it over the strip of photos, and I add one more transparent star, and that completes the layout. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I always appreciate your views and likes and thumbs up and comments. I cannot believe we are on day 25 of 30 Days of Sketches and Scraptember. I hope that you'll take a look in the description box. There are links to all of the other scrapbookers who are following along with these challenges. And I will be back again tomorrow for day 26, and I hope to see you then. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.